Miners, good morning, boo boo. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. B for victory, indeed. Good morning, Bitcoiners. We got a good morning, Bitcoiners. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning, team. Robert, like the 30-minute notification. I was a little ahead of schedule. I don't load it up until I have everything ready. So that's my technique. It just happened to be easy today, right? When you don't go live over the weekend, you have a lot of bonus material, so it goes a little quicker. But I'm glad it was helpful. Here's a stream from, I guess someone is streaming, just chatting. Newton's great. So, as you know, I was away on the weekend, but the sun came up every single day I was gone. And I'm telling you, you got to trust me on this. The sun is up again this morning. We got a full-on sunrise. And Bitcoin's running. So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Have a few more good mornings here. We got a Joseph. Good morning to all. Indeed, good morning to all. Good morning, Bitcoin Graffiti. With the coffee. Good morning. So, as you know, altcoins they certainly were. They certainly were. Bad day yesterday for the altcoins. I noticed that. We're not even going to be talking about that today. We don't even care about that stuff. We don't even care. You're here for some Moscow time, right? The fakest news I can find. So we got a couple good ones today, right? Here's the you guys remember in Seattle. Oh, by the way, I've got a remember during the summer of 2020, they opened up a liberated free zone of Antifa in Seattle, and all kinds of people. There were signs, "You are leaving the USA," right? You're coming into, what do they call it, Chaz or something like that, right? The autonomous zone, Chaz, Capitol Hill autonomous zone. And there was an ice cream shop there that said, we're totally for this autonomous zone, and we're going to work inside the autonomous zone. There's even a clothing brand that I learned about because of the autonomous zone when it was going on that summer. I was looking on Google Maps to see where it was, and I noticed a clothing manufacturer made in USA stuff, and it was all like off trademark sports brands with some Japanese baseball brands too. It's called Ebbets Field Flannels. So I, was wondering if they would deliver stuff in the summer of 2020. So I ordered stuff, and I was like, do they go to the work? Are they going to deliver? It was really nice stuff. And I've actually become a big fan of the brand, and I order all kinds of these sports things and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, fantastic store. So they delivered to me and all that stuff. But there was other shops there. And like I said, this ice cream shop, totally for defunding the police, they said at the time. We're for this. This is great. Let's give ice cream to people. Now it turns out they're suing the city of Seattle. What for? Well, they said an ice cream chain that previously gave the cold shoulder to police officers is suing the city of Seattle over significant losses from the BLM autonomous zone that they promoted. So there you go. That's one of our stories today. Here's another one. It's from MSNBC, right? And they're still worried about the Harry Potter game. So J.K. Rowling, because she's one of the worst people ever in the history of the world, MSNBC won't let it go. And they say, why the new Harry Potter's games attempt to counter bad press is insulting. There's no amount of pandering or creativity that can distract from the damage the Potter franchise's creator is doing to the trans community. So she continues to be the worst person in the world. There's a few more here, but what everyone's talking about is the indictment of Trump that happened Friday. So lots of people talking about that, filled with Moscow time content. The Atlantic says this indictment is different. So this is another one of the walls closing in genre. This one that's been going on since 2016. The walls are closing in on Trump. What's he gonna do? Oh my goodness. So there you go. The Atlantic. This indictment, like so many of the signal moments of his presidency, both eminently foreseeable and utterly astonishing. So the Atlantic printed a ton of articles on this. So that's what we got today, right? And now you can see there's an MSNBC article about it, right? And this is sort of the theme of all of them, right? Here's MSNBC's excellent Moscow Time title. The Trump indictment was a great day for democracy. If the GOP had its way, the work of ordinary citizens doing their civic duty would be thrown in the trash. So the whole point of the article here, right? So it's a dark day, and they mention what people who supported Trump in this said. It's a dark day for the United States of America when a political candidate is indicted by another political candidate. But of course, the MSNBC logic here is that, in fact, the opposite is true. All right. The opposite is true. A former president being held accountable for criminal acts is the true manifestation of the nation's founding creed that all Americans are equal under the law. So this whole, that obviously everyone has seen it now. That's how this hoax is going to work, right? The whole point of this hoax. Remember what we said even 2 weeks ago before this box hoax thing became a story. Did we not predict it was going to be the fake news story of the summer? And why did we predict it? Because it was an unfair and verifiable story. The thing about the documents is you'll never see them because they're secret, so you can't see them. And you can even tell a bit of the scam because all those pictures this weekend with the boxes, right? In the end, it was only 100 documents, but they showed pictures with like tons of boxes. How many boxes does it take to store 100 pieces of paper? How many? I don't know. Does it take a whole pile of boxes in a bathroom? Probably not, right? So that's a sign right away. But this concept here of no one is above the law, right? Well, what about its opposite? Is anyone below the law? Is anyone asking that question? And that's what people are complaining about, of course, that Trump is singled out and below the law. He's not above the law, he's below the law, right? He is being treated, according to many, super unfairly because what he did was also done by other presidents, including Joe Biden, who's currently the person bringing these charges against him. So anytime you hear these stories about no one is above the law, it's a scam, right? Because the opposite should also be asked. Is anyone below the law? No one is above, no one is below. The point is everyone's equal. So in this case, what I see, and it's pretty clear to me anyway, maybe I'm living in cognitive dissonance here, but I see someone who is being treated below the law. And the whole thing brings up a really interesting way to see this and frame it. And I think it's the reason why Bitcoin is going to have its moment in 2024 in the election. And it all comes down to a principle infused inside of Bitcoin, right? And I see Bitcoin Graffiti asking, when whiteboard? This would have actually been an excellent one to do a whiteboard. I've done one before on Newtonian third law, which is what we're about to talk about. So the point, even you've heard many times Michael Saylor, for example, talk about thermodynamic purity of Bitcoin, that it exists in a Newtonian harmony with inputs and outputs. And indeed, it is so, right? But also the substrate in which Bitcoin exists, society, also, as we've understood for a long time, has the same principles of physics in motion, like Newton prescribed, right? So society also exists in terms of equal and opposite reactions and Newton's third law and these things, right? So Newton was debunked by Tedros and Fauci in 2020. So there you go. So indeed, Newton's third law is an important principle, right? It is also within the substrate that Bitcoin exists in. And we're seeing it play out in our society as it is right now. And I've been saying for a long time that Bitcoin benefits as an equal and opposite reaction to clown world. And the more clown world stuff you see, the better it is for Bitcoin, because of course there's another side to the trade. It's not just buying Bitcoin, you sell dollars, right? So you're selling the previous system for a new system. And so all of this is bound up in Newtonian principles and Newtonian laws of physics. And you can already start to see it happen, right? If the plan was to sideline Trump with this indictment, well, it didn't exactly go that way. What did Trump do over the weekend since he's been indicted? He sucked the energy out of the room. All the energy came to him. Are people talking about like Ron DeSantis anymore? And even myself as a massive RFK fan, I mean, did RFK make the news over the weekend? Zero. A little bit, and I'll talk about that today at the end of the show, but no one was talking about RFK this weekend. There was nothing around RFK. There was nothing around anyone this weekend. It was Trump, 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 Trump. And what happened with that? Well, his popularity is greater than ever, right? You had all kinds of people who said, well, I declare for him now. You get people pointing out the hypocrisy, right? You get Joe Rogan here the other day saying all this fucking stuff with his son and the ties to Ukraine and China and the money, the family, they got paid millions of dollars and everyone was trying to obscure it because, well, better than Trump, better than Trump. If that guy was a Republican, they would be up his ass with a microscope. So right away, you're getting people who are seeing the contrasts, and you're seeing people react opposite. You're getting more attention to Trump. You're getting more people supporting Trump. People like Joe Rogan, who were never really Trump supporters, right? Like you never really had Joe Rogan out there saying, I like Trump. That would have been a big win for Trump, but Joe Rogan never said anything of the sort, right? And now that you see him becoming more popular because of this, now that you see him and you see the trap almost, or I don't know if it's a trap, but you see the error that was made, right? So if your plan was to sideline the guy with these indictments and apparently provoke some embarrassing context and all that, it really only worked to the people who believed it already, the people who were already primed to think Trump is the biggest idiot, would do such stupid things and da-da-da-da. But then all kinds of people in the middle see that and they say, well, this is just unfair. This is just someone being singled out. And how many people, when they see Trump up there, end up believing more of Trump's narrative because it looks like the Democrats are playing into what Trump says is happening. He's singled out, he's a victim, he's the target of unfair manipulation and all these things. And it looks more and more true, right? It looks more and more true as all of this happens. But now keep in mind this Newtonian third law for a second, because there's a few ways to analyze it with what's going on, and all of them are relevant to Bitcoin. So the first way, here's an interesting thought I had with DeSantis, for example, right? So we'll even take it to Trump for a second. So the equal and opposite Newtonian physics of all this stuff. So when Trump came on the scene, I thought the way he provoked liberals into outrage and the way he made them crazy and caused them so much stress and all that, in the end would sort of break the tension because people can't be that angry and stressed out and all of that stuff, right? I was wrong. It didn't work that way, right? That's how I thought about it in 2015 and 2016. I said, when Trump gets elected, they're not going to be able to keep lying this much. And now that he's president, I said in 2016, eventually people are going to come around to seeing, they're going to get tired of being outraged and they're going to see, well, he's not so bad. Well, it didn't happen that way, right? Newtonian physics just didn't allow it to happen that way, because what you got were more crazy people because of Trump, not less, right? You got more crazy people on the other side disagreeing with him and all that stuff. So I still see Trump as expensive in a sense, right? Expensive. At the time, I didn't understand this accounting. I didn't understand we'd get more crazies because of Trump. I thought we would get fewer. So I was blind to the Newtonian physics thing. But look at, for example, DeSantis, right? I believe now that the principle applies to all leadership and all of these folks. Look at DeSantis. What's DeSantis known as? He's the anti-woke guy, right? He was anti-woke against Disney, right? Disney went woke. DeSantis stood up to them. DeSantis stands up to any of the woke people. He stands up to woke colleges. He stands up to woke education system, the books, and all this stuff, right? So he's the anti-woke guy. But what happens? And this is why I think he's, his whole thing is over. Like, he's not going anywhere, right? What are we going to get? If anyone would go with DeSantis, for example, what are you going to get? Well, in the same way that I was wrong about Trump stopping the left-wing craziness, he made more of it. DeSantis, right? If you elect the woke anti-trans guy, what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get more. You're going to get more. You're not going to get what he's asking for. You're going to get more people talking about it. I still believe, and I've said it many times on the show, all the trans stuff. Now, we can give all the caveats. Don't target kids. Everyone agrees on that, right? I think in this space, not everyone in the world, obviously, there's people who are going down that road and it's no good. We are very LGBTQ plus positive here, right? That's my personal belief. I don't know about all of you, but adults can do sort of what they want, right? I'm not interested. And Trump, in fact, was that candidate for a long time. He's even said, I don't like woke recently, like he said that last week. He was the first presidential candidate in the history of America to campaign as a open supporter with the flag or the red, the rainbow thing and all that stuff. The old version, not the new one, with the new stuff added, and the super racist White House that missed the new color that was added. They didn't get it in a time. I don't know if you saw, but the pride flag was in the White House. They didn't quite get the good one up this time because there's a new one that came out with a new color and they didn't have it in there. So they're missing one shade on that flag they put up. So it's kind of not inclusive. They got to do better. But don't forget, Trump would always, he didn't really pick that fight, let's say, right? Even with the abortion thing, like what is Trump's opinion on abortion? Have you heard it recently? The Roe v. Wade and all that stuff. His opinion is, I want everyone to be happy and I want the states to figure it out and the states can take different roles. The federal government's out of the game. That's his actual plan. and that's what we're living in, right? So Trump sort of diffuses some of these issues, believe it or not. But if you go with someone like DeSantis on these issues, what do you think you're going to get more of? He's that guy, right? He's the woke, anti-woke guy. It's just going to cause more of that. And we're already seeing it, right? So part of the obsession you start having now that the left wing has on trans stuff, in my mind, is a Newtonian physics action reaction. Because now I'm not blaming Republicans and I'm not blaming the Daily Wire, who I'm about to talk about, and I'm not blaming DeSantis for this, right? These things are sort of stepping up together and are sort of locked in a dovetail nosedive, right? And they're just going with each other. But my prediction is merely that DeSantis might look effective to fighting these people, but he's just going to create more of it. There's going to be more to fight if you go with a guy like that. Now, look, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from voting DeSantis here. That's also not what I'm saying. I'm not like getting involved in which candidate of the Republicans and da 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 da. I'm just saying that the thing you should anticipate if you go with DeSantis is you're going to get more of it. It's not going to go away, right? If you go with him, it's not going away. It's more. And, the Daily Wire, I don't know if you saw it this weekend, but was completely kicked off of all YouTube and all the art and all the creators got strikes, right? So here's Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of Daily Wire. Daily Wire, if you guys don't know, it's where Candace Owens works, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson has a show there, right? So it's very, very popular. But here's what he says. Over the last few months, the Daily Wire has received 200 violations from YouTube across our accounts. Almost all are coverage of the trans debate, right? And, you get Candace Owens here with a long thing about how it's insidious and how it's really bad and you need to be reminded it's so bad. Now it is, right? I don't want to see anyone censored. I don't like that. I don't like that YouTube does it. But let's remember that the constant stream of content that the Daily Wire is creating here has a Newtonian effect in society. The more and more people focused on promoting trans stuff is an action reaction situation with the people denouncing it, right? They're locked in step like that. So, I'm not saying if we stop talking about it, it's all going to go away either, right? That's also not what I'm saying. It seems to be here. I don't think it's going away tomorrow. But if you would go with a guy like that, like DeSantis, you're probably going to get more of it, right? You're probably going to get more of it. Again, I'm not trying to blame him. That's just the way he thinks about it. You even had Trump notice that this weekend, right? So Trump made a speech in North Carolina, and he said that it's amazing how strongly people feel about, parentheses, the trans issue. I talk about cutting taxes. People go like that. I talk about transgender, everybody goes crazy. 5 years ago, you didn't even know what the hell it was, right? So Trump is already picking up on everyone being so primed to this stuff. Now, there's very interesting ways to frame it as well. And in defense of the folks at the Daily Wire and anyone else who's really offended by the children stuff, like I'll defend them for a moment here and say, like, this tweet I have from Bennett's phylactery. So not really, don't really know who this guy is, but he says they love to treat this issue like it's our brand new crisis, a brand new mass media manufactured hysterical crisis, right? Like we came up with it and demanded that there be a national conversation about trans stuff, right? So what he's basically saying here is that this idea that right-wing people started the snowball rolling is how it's often presented, right? It's like right-wing people are outraged. They got to drum this issue up and make it bigger and get attention on it. It's a snowball, right? Each party is doing an action reaction. Each party is upping the ante each time, upping the torque that goes along these issues. So it's been happening for a while, and there you go. So, but the idea of this action reaction thing, right, comes back to, so enough on DeSantis. Bring it back to Joe Biden and everything that's going on with the Trump indictment, because there's the action reaction to that too. So now we see them say, and even in many liberals' minds, right, it's okay, this is unprecedented. No one is above the law, right? This is an unlikely scenario where Trump alone is such an unique character that this is a normal thing to deal with the uniqueness of Trump. But here's what I think is going to happen, right? So they do it to Trump and they get this whole conversation and they get all kinds of people talking about, oh, above the law, below the law, and these things, right? But the issue quickly becomes with Trump being treated this way and action reaction and all these kinds of things. You can, making Trump a martyr, right, out of this. Now, you can imagine, and, his numbers are way up, right? I guess he's up 38 points now on DeSantis because of what happened this weekend. So there already, it was a benefit to Trump. But to those people who believe that Trump had it coming and are never going to change their mind on Trump, here's where things become interesting in the Newtonian physics of what's happening, right? They're probably going to do the same thing to RFK, right? So and it might be a very similar, that doesn't mean they're indicting him, but it means that they're going to, bend the rules, influence the context, influence the issues. We're already seeing it. They changed the order of the primaries, right? They're not going to New England first. They're going to South Carolina first, where Kennedy's name isn't as powerful a brand as it is in New England, right? Where it's an exceptional brand. So already you see this equal and opposite reaction. Now, the issue is if people were willing to give, liberal people were willing to give, or Democrat people or anti-Trump people were willing to give Biden a confidence that this was a one-off and, no one is above the law, including Trump, and manipulate things because Trump is so uniquely unfair. What happens when the next person becomes, they use the same tactics, right? They use the same kind of tactics, which we're already seeing, like I said. So if this happens again, which it probably will, to someone like RFK, you're going to get the whole conversation changing tone. And you might actually get this sort of reaction, because it happened to Bernie twice, as far as the DNC manipulating the primaries to favor a candidate. And so it didn't seem to be any comeuppance last time because the conversation didn't quite bleed over, right? It was whoever could beat Trump. But this time around, you might have a situation where I don't think RFK is going to play ball with these guys the same way that Bernie might have played ball and sort of rolled over, right? Because remember, Trump used to always tell Bernie, tell the truth about how you got screwed over, and he never did. So in this case, you have a whole situation here where RFK might bring attention to the corrupted nature of our political process more even than Trump has, right? So, and if you take that idea, right, of RFK and the equal and opposite reactions, right? So here's a little bit of news that RFK made over the weekend, and he tweeted this. He says, "People stuck in war mentality create enemies where there could have been peaceful competition. War with China would be a calamity for the whole planet. It only becomes inevitable if people like senators in this article keep pushing it. So he's talking about a article and Rand Paul being cited and saying, my colleagues are beating the drums of war with China. And then he says here, ultimately, our free market system is superior to China's centrally controlled one. We can outcompete them in peaceful competition as long as we stop squandering our resources in endless foreign wars, right? So something that I think most people here absolutely agree with, right? We don't want any more foreign wars. And we certainly don't want a war with China, right? Like we are currently already engaged in a psychological and economic war with China. But more than that, like a hot war, right? There's pretty much no appetite for that. But the Newtonian part of that, right, is that indeed you do see people on both sides of the aisle in America saying war is coming, right? And China's definitely doing it too. I'm not trying to make China sound like they're innocent here, right? China's whole domestic policy under Xi has been about substituting economic growth as the main coordinating principle in the Communist Party's relationship with the people, replacing that with nationalism and chauvinism and these things, right? So that's been something that many people have observed in the world. Could be a propaganda operation, but I'm seeing it. I've seen the movies, for example, that China has produced. The tone of them has changed in the past few years, at least as far as I can tell. And they're definitely all about China is the good guy. America, it's the American formula. It's the Wall Street formula, just flipped and manipulated by the Chinese creators instead of American creators. So it's just a reversal of good guy, bad guy. But it's the same dichotomies. It's the same black and white. It's the same easy narratives. There's heroes, there's villains, story, right? So can't blame them for doing that. But again, it is a Newtonian thing, right? It's the same way that the trans debate sort of got upped by people fighting, and then all of a sudden it's an all-encompassing thing. The China situation can easily go that way, right? You just start a little bit and then the thing snowballs, equal and opposite reactions get bigger and bigger. The resonance of them magnifies, and then suddenly you're in a hot war. So we don't want that, right? We don't want that. But you can imagine that everything that's going on with the cheating and the lying and the potential for war all over the place, because it looks like anyway, the thing in Ukraine, right now there's this whole thing with the dam and what's going on. There's the offensive, right? There's people who say the counteroffensive has failed. You have Putin, who gave an interview the other day saying it's not working out. Here's War Clandestine. The reality is slowly being accepted by Western media, admitting that Ukraine have begun the counteroffensive, and it has been a colossal failure thus far, right? So there's some people saying that the land bridge is going to be blown up, and that, here's War Clandestine even bringing up a Washington Post article, D-Day dawns for Ukraine. This was just 3 days ago. The Western media were hyping this up to be the Ukrainian equivalent of D-Day. And now it's falling apart, apparently. But here's my prediction. I think that once this land bridge to Crimea is gone, I think that's going to be the excuse to finally start having a peace talk over in Ukraine and Russia. Maybe wrong, but that's what I'm seeing. And we get Narwhal Taco saying here that internally China is actively pushing war with the West propaganda, almost certainly because it gives the Chinese people a common enemy to unite them, but it's very aggressive. Yeah, so that's what I was referring to, Narwhal. I was mentioning the movies. So I didn't want to speak too certainly about it because I bet you there is some nuance to it. But what you said checks out with my worldview. So I do indeed see it very similarly to you, Narwhal. It's happening, right? We see it on both sides. We see this sort of propaganda coming up, but and again, it's a Newtonian physics kind of thing, right? If RFK is one of the sole voices talking about peace here, and he's attacked in the same way that Trump was attacked and things were manipulated and all that, I think you're going to start getting even more attention into the failures of the media propaganda, more attention into the failures of economic problems, of centralization. And you can start to see it. You can start to see why it would unravel, the economic war that's combined with the militaristic war, and something that Balaji is observing with current negotiations between Taiwan and America, because they're related. Of course, the tension around China and USA is almost all based in Taiwan, or at least that becomes the way to articulate the tension between China and the United States. And of course, everything around that tension relates to the manufacture of microchips. So Balaji's bringing up an article here and a debate that's going on right now between Taiwan and America. And here's what it looks like, right? So he says TSMC, so that's the large manufacturer of chips in Taiwan, evidently does not want to send all its technology abroad. So the South China Morning Post article that he's referring to here is Taiwan's high-tech jewel is quietly fighting U.S. industrial capture. So the quote he pulls out of the article is, most of its valuable chips will still be produced on the island. This is despite intense pressure. And he cites a few more articles here. He says many on the island are arguing that it's not really in Taiwan's national interest to give up their crown jewels so that they can get crushed in a proxy war with China. Hence pushback like this. And he's referring to this headline from about a month ago saying defense minister says Taiwan will not let U.S. blow up TSMC during Chinese attack. Balaji goes on to say if TSMC's most advanced tech isn't sent abroad, it's questionable as to whether the $40 billion investment in reshoring is going to succeed. It was already very expensive. One should be skeptical of whether DC can execute a sharp U-turn on manufacturing. It's not just about money, but culture. So will TMC reshoring work? It's questionable. Everyone from Sobram Amari to Biden is advocating industrial policy like this, but it's essentially state-based venture capital. That's hard to do profitably, particularly without the involvement of successful VCs and founders. When the USSR collapsed, many factories were revealed to be grossly uncompetitive when exposed to international competition. For example, their ovens were worth more as scrap metal on the free market. I didn't know this. They would sell markets to Germany who just melted them down because there was actual like bronze. They were made out of like metals that, Chinese industrialists or American industrialists wouldn't have used for these things. But here's the real crux of what Balaji is getting to. He says the money printer distorts the U.S. economy as much as the 5-year plan distorted the USSR economy. And the question is, will the printed money be spent on industrial policy? Will that be allocated well, right? And what he's saying is, or we will end up with $300 million bus lanes, $100 billion trains, and $8 trillion wars, right? Printing is seizure, is taxation, is centralization. If everyone has $1 trillion and the state prints $1 trillion, the first order, it seized 50% of the wealth stored in dollars. Yes, it's evolved to be invisible, but that's how Keynesian resembles communism. Asset seizure plus state allocation. Anyway, returning to TSMC, it looks like the Taiwanese may be just angling to get $40 billion from DC money printer and then more from the Europeans, while not giving anyone the truly advanced chips, right? So, you get all this war talk, right? You get all this war talk. You get folks more or less starting the snowball, right, where you can see the equal and opposite reactions. However, the tension between those two things, and that all of these things are happening at once, these equal and opposite reactions, right? So you put those things together, right? You put those things together. And then you put this UFO story at the end of it, right? And the UFO story has some interesting things. So here's what I think about the UFO story and why it plays into this stuff and why it could lead very soon to one of these Newtonian physics, equal and opposite reactions, and bang, right? Big change. So Eric Weinstein talking about the whistleblower on the UFOs. Remember what I said months ago? We see UFOs because the US owes, right? And along the lines of what Balaji is saying, the money printer, along the lines of what RFK is saying, the economic currents around the Chinese situation, especially dovetailing with things maybe quieting down in Russia and Ukraine, and maybe there's a need and a vacuum for more conflict, right? So it's one of these things. So Eric Weinstein talking about the whistleblower, right? He says, I have no direct evidence that this is real, but what you are hearing here has oddly spread quite far within the defense and intelligence sectors. You pick it up from multiple high-level informants. Assume it is all bullshit. Then that bullshit is absolutely compromising our security, right? He says, try it the other way. Assume that this is not bullshit. Then the stigma and inane stove-type security strategy of keeping this away from our own scientists is totally compromising our security. Both ways we have a security problem. The answer is to investigate the claims either way. We either have a paranormal cult running around our nuclear strategy, a disinformation campaign targeting our own people, or something unprecedented kept away from our own scientists. You don't need to know which is true to know that this needs to be cleaned up pronto, as I've been saying. So here's where the final nail in the coffin could come for the centralized systems, because this sort of incorporates everything at once in a package that the human mind and average people can absolutely understand. There's nothing worse than expectations being unmet, than anticipation being stifled. These things, losing things you thought you had, motivate and anger people way more than not getting a thing you wanted, right? They're not the same thing. So teasing people with this stuff, teasing people with what really is one of the great mysteries, unknowns, suspicions people have had for a generation. They've been suspicious that there's a collusion between the government and the military about aliens and alien technology and all of these things, right? So, and here's my theory about why we're even seeing it, right? My theory about why we're seeing all this alien stuff to begin with is actually to manipulate the Chinese and the Russians. It's to make them think that America actually has alien technology and they should fear the United States. Now, I could be completely wrong about this. I could be totally wrong about it, right? I might be, but that's what I'm seeing, because there's no way in hell they found aliens and alien technology, right? It's one of these issues. So the deception combined with all of these other stories, right? The UFO deception is the final cherry on top of Clown World actually being ridiculed by everyone on the planet. They played their last card with the aliens, right? It's the ultimate way to convince people they're being misled by magicians. Because I could say the thing with the boxes, right? Let's go back to what we first started with the boxes and the justice. And I said 100 documents in a pile of boxes, right? Absolutely propaganda. That is a clear sign of a magician's trick, right? And because the magician, when he makes the trick, he doesn't have to make the diversion symmetrical to the outcome. They're not going to waste time on that. It's just a diversion. So the boxes are a diversion, right? But when you stop and say, oh, well, there's the sign of the magician's trick. I saw a pile of boxes, but you're telling me it's only 100 documents. Well, why do you need a pile of boxes for 100 documents? It's not even in the same planet, right? So once you can see the magician's trick, it's really a Wizard of Oz. Once you see the curtain pulled, you can't see the magic for anything but manipulation. And the UFO thing is all the cards at once, right? Now, in the same way that they've probably miscalculated on Trump, they think, oh, it's gonna slow down the campaign. He's got to deal with legal trouble. Well, Newtonian physics said it's way more popularity for Trump. As I said, his lead over DeSantis has grown. He sucked all the energy out of the room over the past 4 days. That's all anyone's talking about is Trump. It's all over Twitter. It's all over social media. The mainstream media is forced to talk about Trump. They should have learned from Trump 1 and 2. The way to deal with him is ignore him. It always was. And they were doing great. They were doing great. They were ignoring him. His energy was weakening. But now they go and indict him again, the second indictment. So it even looks more caricature-like when that's second indictment, just like you got impeached twice. So you're going to get the equal and opposite reaction here. And the UFO thing is going to sucker so many people in when it's really just a way to up the ante with fighting China in the same way that RFK mentioned, right? RFK mentioning here this capacity to use heightened rhetoric to fall into a fight with China when we really should just be fighting them fair and square. The same way Bitcoin wants to fight fiat, fair and like we're just trying to be more attractive. We're just trying to make a better future and compare our future against the fiat world's future and let people decide for themselves once they see the contrast. And that's all Kennedy is saying about China and America. Enough of the ratcheting up of propaganda. Let's just beat them square and we'll be fine. Let's make our own chips. And as Balaji said, difficult, but I mean, what other country could figure this out but American businesses, right? I don't think it would be as complicated as some people say. Now, I understand you got to build the factories and they're years behind and but look what Germany did with the LNG, right? I make fun of Germany here all the time. Really large collection of morons over there, right? Really large. But you got to give them credit. They built all that infrastructure for the LNG in months, and it is tip-top amazing, right? I didn't think they could do that, but they did it. Should never underestimate German engineers. They know how to do these things, right? No problem underestimating their political strategists. They're all stupid. But their engineering, world-class, right? And I think, if Germany can do something like build huge amounts of physical infrastructure to store unbelievable amounts of LNG, I can't understand why America can't build factories that produce high-end microchips. Now, again, there's a lot, it's lost knowledge to a lot of Americans, stuff they've never done, don't know how to do, but people can figure things out. So with the UFOs, it being such a large story now, it's been months that people are getting interested with the weather balloons and the China thing last time, and now it's a whole new round of these. Again, Weinstein here is saying, no matter what, we've got issues with our government and our media and our national security apparatus, and that more and more people are getting suckered in with this UFO story means that more and more people are primed for the Newtonian physics of the equal and opposite reaction. And this is just more people lining up to see if the wizard can deliver the UFOs and aliens. And we're not getting any UFOs or aliens. It's not happening, right? It's just not happening. So the deception, the disappointment. Now, you can distract people again tomorrow with something new. But again, you're going to get a whole bunch of people, just like indicting Trump and saying it's good for democracy. You're going to get a whole bunch of people who move the other way because of this UFO story. And because it's not inherently political, it's going to do wonders for destroying trust in institutions, for angling more anger towards the national security apparatus. People don't like to be lied to, and the UFO story is so blatant that it's going to create this equal and opposite reaction. So where does this all fit for Bitcoin? Well, it's pretty simple, right? The US dollar needs trust in the media apparatus to function. If centralized broadcast media can't do its job, that is how the network of the US dollar propagates. There is no network propagation without coordination of mainstream media in the United States. Bitcoin and the US dollar are both psychological commodities, and the perpetuation of the psychological conditions that help the US dollar are based on the centralization of the media. In the same way that independent miners broadcast the nodes and individual decentralized nodes broadcast the Bitcoin network globally, in the case of the United States, it's central broadcasting that propagates the network and propagates the perpetuation of it. And if that breaks, if the same thing that's pushing it's good for democracy, clown world's awesome, UFOs and aliens, don't pay attention to anything else, if that thing breaks, the equal and opposite reaction will drive people towards the opposite of that system. And so if you have people driven away, more people driven away, that's all we need is more people driven away from the centralized broadcasting system. And what you'll get is more people primed and ready to embrace Bitcoin. And that's what changes UFOs into UTXOs. So there you go. Let's see. I got a lot of comments today. Let's see what people are saying. Let me go back. I saw a lot happening. Let's see. What was the initial thing that... no, she's a feminist. So it's, some feminists feel like erasing. So J.K. Rowling, the question Bitcoin Graffiti has is on J.K. Rowling. So yeah, some feminists are of the opinion that the trans thing erases females. So she's part of that gang, right? She's the feminist opposition, which exists, which gets ignored, but exists. I love this. I got to put this one again. Newton was debunked by... That's very funny. What about Hillary? Yeah, I mean, it's always what about Hillary, right? But look, equal and opposite reaction. Trump has responsibility in this. When Trump started yelling about lock her up in 2016, I thought it was hilarious. Loved the humor. But I said, careful. Be careful with this. It's no fan of Hillary Clinton. Probably a criminal. Probably did a lot of terrible things. I don't know, right? I believed he should have just let her alone and not had the chance of lock her up, because in the end, this is what you get, right? It's Newtonian physics. Now, I'm not like... I always give deference to Trump's... who am I to say, he's the greatest persuader in the history of the world, right? So he chose that path, but I saw the consequences immediately. So in a certain sense, I'm not saying he's responsible for this. And indeed, Hillary did probably way worse. And it sounds exactly the same with the bathroom and the servers and the emails. What about her emails? But remember, the problem with that story is the same with the problem with the Trump story. It's just document management. Like, document management is too boring. It's too stupid, right? So I was never like... if Hillary did the other crazy stuff that people think, that's another story. But if it's a document thing, right? I'm with Comey. When Comey said what he said about Hillary back in the day about, well, it didn't rise to the standard, I would apply that to Trump too. It's probably not okay what he did. Probably technically something wrong with it or whatever. But it's one of those things that just doesn't rise to the standard, right? So, in the Newtonian physics of this, Chris, Trump has some responsibility, right? So nice to hear sensible... Thanks, Joe. We love it, man. We love having sensible conversations. Good morning, peeps. Internally, China is actively yeah, sorry, I read that one already. Hello. If enough people disappear, no one can testify. Yeah, see, that stuff is real for Hillary, right? Or I don't know if it's real, but that stuff I wouldn't mind being investigated. But the email thing, like, it's another one of these, where were the documents? Who knows? Why doesn't Bitcoin Magazine do their DD on the cover up of the UFO phenomenon by the industry? So I think that's what I was taught. I mean, I'm not speaking for Bitcoin Magazine and any other research when it comes to cover up of UFO phenomena. I'm giving my opinion here that it's all a scam and there is no UFO being covered up at all, right? That's my opinion. Maybe this is not it is a sideshow. Yeah. Indeed, yes. Where's the spasmodic dysphonia? I thought I had that. RFK has exactly his spasmodic dysphonia. So there you go. Is this how long it takes getting fluent into Dyer? This is a Bitcoin worldview show. We don't talk too much about crypto, but there's a lot of places you can go for that. A lot of places you can go. We don't do much crypto here. Every human being on the planet is able to step outside and initiate a quest for contact with extraterrestrial beings anytime, anywhere. It's called the human endeavor. Yeah, exactly. Whether they are a Bitcoin or not, the vast amounts of technology being withheld from the private sector by private corporations. Oh yeah, well, if you want to talk about that, here's something I'm very happy is happening, right? So Bitcoin 2021, all I talked about, with people, right? Because we were at the top of them, things were going great for Bitcoin. Everyone, and I hadn't, you hadn't seen anyone in a year. 2021, it was great. El Salvador made the big announcement. But all I'm talking about in 2021, June 2021, all I'm talking about, and I had started thinking about this stuff when I was a law student, and I haven't stopped, but it intensified during COVID, was the pyramids and an ancient civilization and a lost history. So one of the first things we've been talking about on this show is that if you think we've been talking about fake news today, right? We talk about fake news. I always mention this. If you think the news is fake, wait until you get a load of history. It's the fakest thing going. I mean, absolutely fake. What I think is amazing and what gives me so much confidence that we're on a short-term road to a Bitcoin standard and why everything's about to change is because 2 years ago, not a lot of people were talking about the ancient civilization. Where did the pyramids come from? And again, remember, I've been talking about it since it's been almost 20 years that I've been Atlantis is real. It really exactly as Plato said. Remember that's the first words that Plato says in his treatise on Atlantis. Atlantis is a real place. It is not a metaphor. It was a real place, right? So that's something, I learned about the Plato stuff years ago and all of that. So this ancient civilization stuff, I'm more convinced than ever. And I heard a theory from the Y files before, and it was, and this is why I mean there's progress on this. Scott Adams, who I mention all the time, I'm a huge fan, and a lot of the show is inspired by his format. So I'm a huge fan of Scott Adams. He was talking on his show about, he's starting to talk about the UFOs and sorry, not the UFOs, the pyramids and ancient civilization more and more. And he thinks he figured it out and mentioned it on the show yesterday. And it fits exactly with my theory. And I'll explain what the Y-Files thing and what other people are thinking, what we're going to learn about, because it's ancient technology, right? So, and this is what Tesla believed, right? The wireless energy thing. And he did base it on the shape of a pyramid. So it turns out that so we know what would have been on top of the pyramid, right? It had a shell on it, I guess you could say. And the shell was a electrical insulator, right? It was made of limestone. So the limestone, that's all fallen off, right? You don't see that on the Great Pyramids anymore. The cap was probably a conductor, gold. A lot of people think a gold cap on the pyramid, right? A conductor. And then the pyramid itself is made of granite, right? Now, do you know one physical way? And it's Newtonian physics again, right? So luckily this dovetails with our subject. So you can create electricity through the compression of quartz. Did you know that? That compressing quartz and vibrating it can create electricity? So all the granite and the weight of those pyramids is compressing quartz. There's quartz inside all of the pieces, right? And the chambers below the pyramid look like that. So there's no, there's never been a sarcophagus found in a pyramid ever, right? They're not everyone who learned their burials, that was always known to be a scam. They're not burial grounds. What was in the chambers? Because there's only like a bit of space inside of the pyramids, right? It's a couple chambers and like kind of slanted angle shafts. So it looks like, now, not an engineer, but if I take my understanding of Newtonian physics, my understanding of quartz and the electrical processes that go into it, and that it's the same as the watch batteries, the ones you shake, that's the quartz thing. That's where you get the electricity by charging your watch by shaking it. That's the effect of creating an electrical charge through the vibration of quartz. So remember, the pyramid is made of quartz, right? So what's going on is there was water in the chamber. The water would create friction, vibrations, and those vibrations would travel up the pyramid. And the vibrations inside and the compression of the weight of the pyramid on the quartz that it's made of, with the insulation around it, would actually create electricity, which would go to the top of the pyramid. And then you didn't require wires, you didn't require telephone poles or copper or anything. It would just emanate from electricity from there, which is also why they're often built together, right? So why were the pyramids built together? Well, why would the power plants only work in certain locations in the world, it looks like, right? And it's the same as if you had a site cleared for a power plant to begin with. If you needed more power, you build another one there, right? If you needed another nuclear reactor to handle one specific area, would you go to a totally different place? I mean, I played SimCity a bunch, right? In SimCity, you put your power plants together because it helps you manage pollution, it helps you manage this, right? So that could be why. But if we're talking about hidden technology, it doesn't have to be from aliens. It can be from ancient civilizations as well. So 100% there's technology not being shared. And that was a perfect case, right? Tesla brought that to JP Morgan back in the old days. But what did JP Morgan sell? He sold the telephone poles with the wires, with the metal, with the copper, and this and that. He's not going to build a wireless electricity pyramid, right? And it looks like Tesla built it and it worked, right? He had the thing in Colorado and he had the thing on Long Island. It looks like those were pyramids that could transmit the energy. Now, I don't know how that works with Wi-Fi signals and disturbance. I'm not sure if it's really an option. I don't know. Or cellular signals or radio waves being transmitted. I don't know how all these frequencies interact, right? I don't know if you can have wireless electricity and wireless information. Maybe not. But the point is, we're going to enter a world very soon where we understand, in the same way that people are waking up to fake news and its effects, and that is going to help the Bitcoin Standard along, this UFO thing can lead right to us understanding that history was fake as hell. And the deception of history being fake to this extent can certainly have a Newtonian principled action-reaction thing where, indeed, we do open our minds to completely new ways of governing ourselves. And we get rid of this temporary aberration in the history of human governance, which is to organize ourselves around nation states and nationalism and national identity, right? It's completely new, right? So all very good info for Bitcoiners. I would be careful that, yeah, I mean, look, I will not deny Atlantis, we talk about demonic beings, like, I believe in the flood myths and the Nephilim. And so there are things not created by God, according to the Bible itself, right? And so, yeah, there's definitely stuff like that, Nicholas. I wouldn't poo-poo it. And I would be careful. Tesla even referenced the firmament. Yes, indeed. So I hope I'm talking about that along with you, right? The unacknowledged special access programs funded with trillions of dollars of black budget dollars stolen by military. Yeah, there you go. That's what we're talking about. Any attention of the UFO will be a threat of... Yeah. It will turn out that the ghost of Kiev, now he's coming for vengeance. The ghost of Kiev was an elephant. Can't fight China with every U.S. company wants to open business there. Yeah, exactly. China has its own troubles. I don't think America needs to get involved in China's troubles. They've got their own, revolution coming and their own issues. We don't need to join in. Human initiated communism. Yeah, exactly. UFOs do exist. Trump is the Sith Lord or apprentice. Crypto is the currency of the future. After our Clone Wars featuring Elon Musk. Could be. And now UFOs, I think UFOs exist, just not from aliens, right? Don't you think they might nuke some cities, have AI generate some video, and call it an alien invasion? That would be dark, UTXO. That would be dark, but I wouldn't put it past some of these people. I still don't see even the worst people nuking humanity. Maybe, look, I don't have a lot of confidence in Putin or Biden. I still don't think Biden is capable of nuking a place. Maybe. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. As a Bitcoiner, watching the news is so expensive because every time I turn it on, I can't help but smash buy. Brian, you are a walking Newtonian principle. You are a walking Newtonian principle. Do we call them aliens because they are from other planets, or can we just have the dignity to call them people by now? Thanks, Brian. I'm glad you liked that. I'm glad you like that. BTC is video game money. It remains useless until everyone plays the video game. I don't know about that, Vincent. It's useful to lots of people right now, even though not everyone's playing the game. Go and ask people ask my fellow Canadians who got turned into terrorists. They'll tell you. They'll tell you it was useful. Oh yeah, there we go. That's cleared up. Bitcoiners don't exactly. Don't believe what you hear. Verify the facts. Yeah. Now, I'll give a correlation to that. Do your own research. The extreme version of verify the facts is not really possible, and we're not capable of doing our own research on vaccines, for example. But find your own consensus is the way I look at it. Right? Find your own varied inputs and find a way to turn those into something that makes sense to you, right? Money trails are so easy to follow these days that it isn't even funny. Yeah, we're going to see a lot more. We're going to see a lot more. Sorry, I figured Bitcoin Graffiti. All right, so close to 1,000 subs. Enjoy the show and your takes on Clown. It's refreshing, especially because a lot of the Bitcoin space is primarily focused on price and charts. Thanks, Downtown Music. Yeah, that's what I mean. I've done a lot of those price and charts shows over the years. So that's why I'm doing it this way. There are some really interesting archaeological books that were available in the early days of the internet, essentially claiming that we're in the fourth age of man. Other things, yeah, I've seen that. I've seen a lot of those stuff. Love SimCity back in the day. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was the biggest. I'll still play every now and again if I'm really bored. Compelling photos included. Yeah, I've seen a lot of them. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, yeah, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. Yes, thank you, Bushmaster. And look, I'm not sure I know about the pyramids, but I've seen this explanation before. Scott Adams, I think, did an amazing job yesterday breaking it down, and it fits all the questions that I had. Right, made of quartz. We know what quartz can do, and look, we heard about the demons before. Look, if you believe the stories in the Bible, you'll know that it was because basically angels, God-like things, gave away the secrets, didn't let humans find them for themselves, gave away the secrets to the universe. That's why the flood came, right? So maybe. And if you remembered Civilization or SimCity, you'd always order a little catastrophe if, if you didn't like how things were going. What does that look like, right? So there you go. Putin just executed hackers. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Did he drop them from space? That's what we're going to do. SimCity. Yeah, I love Sid Meier's Civilization. All right. That's all I got for today. Bitcoin secret of universe. It might be Robert. I mean, if you boil it all down to mathematics, and you think, in the same way that so what we have left of ancient Egypt comes from the Hermetic faith and Hermes Trismegistus, and he will tell you. And remember I'm a big simulation theory guy, so what he said, Hermes Trismegistus, in the first Hermetic principle is that all the world is psychological from your brain. Right? The whole universe exists in a psychological context. It's not real, right? So he says that straight up, right? Straight up. It's a figment of the mind. So there's that part. And then the the I guess correlation to that, right? The correlation to Hermes saying everything is the mind is um, the story in the Book of Enoch, which is one of those Dead Sea Scrolls versions of the Bible that isn't official. Says that the people who created all this stuff and told us about the pyramids and all that and came to Earth because they wanted our women, right? That's the story. They were jealous that God had given man women and that the other creations that God didn't make didn't have women, couldn't have kids. So they came and made babies, which ended up being giants and crazy. And then because they had divulged all the secrets of the universe to people, it was sort of a cheating situation. Humans didn't learn on their own, so wiped out. But those people who were there, do you know what they were called in the Book of Enoch? Watchers. They're the Watchers. Ancient Sumerian texts around this, and ancient Sumeria probably being the first society to come after the flood, believe those people also were called the Watchers. Watchers, believe it or not, like video game stuff. So that's all I got for today, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for coming, everyone, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.